What is a scene?
A scene is an interesting thing because it's not the same to a writer, to a screenwriter, as it is to, say, an actor or to even like a line producer or a director even. Because they think of scenes, even when you look at Final Draft, let's say scene heading, interior so-and-so, exterior so-and-so. A scene is not a place. A scene is, to a screenwriter, is a unit of emotional information that is communicated through dramatic conflict. But it's a unit of information. So as a screenwriter, what you're going through, your outline, and I usually write from just a beat sheet outline. It's not terribly detailed, but it can be detailed if you like. You're going through your outline and you're saying, okay, what is the unit of information that I must communicate here in order to advance my story to the next place, and then the next one, and then the next one? And how do I do that? Those are scenes. And you can write a film story that has technically 3 scenes in one location, but in real time it happens all the time, where the dynamic between the characters shifts even in mid-conversation sometimes, and it becomes about a new thing. Well, that's a new scene to a writer. No one else would call it that. But we have to think in those terms because you don't want to get stuck in the idea that a scene is a place. It's not. It's not an interior and exterior. That's a location. It's a setup if you're in production, but that's not the same thing. A scene to a writer is a unit of information. I know what my spine is. I know what my central conflict is. How do I move that story forward? And each time I'm moving it forward, that's a scene. That's a unit. And it's best to think of it in those terms. In my video series, I talked about Lost in Translation, and then I compare it to another movie called Brief Encounter from the 1940s, a great film written by Noel Coward and directed by David Lean. And it's fundamentally the same story, which is to say it's 2 people who meet by chance and have a flirtation, right? Except in Brief Encounter, every moment is a scene that advances that relationship from 2 people who meet by chance, sort of like each other. Well, we meet again, we're getting to know each other even better. Now we're starting to fall in love. Uh-oh, we're trying to resist falling in love. Oh no, we can't resist falling in love. Uh-oh, we have to admit we're falling in love. Now what do? Now we're trying to take action on the fact that we're falling in love, and we're trying to have an affair, but we don't know how to go about doing it. And every scene moved the story forward, compared to Lost in Translation, in which nothing happened. So a scene is that, to a writer, is a very different animal than it is to a location manager or a producer or even a director.
How many scenes are in a movie?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer to it. It can vary, of course, because I tend to think more in terms of beats. And when I break down a script, a story, I think in terms of what are the beats of the story, that is, say, the things that happen in the story. So, for example, a beat, if I have a beat sheet outline, one of the beats might be they fall in love, right? But it might take me 5 scenes to execute that beat, depending on how important that is in my overall story. So I don't know that I'm even resistant to putting a number on it. But I would say in a typical 2-hour movie, I usually wind up, if I take the time to do it, there's probably 30 to 50 beats in that movie, usually, which might translate into 50 to 70 scenes. But I'm reluctant to put a number on it because I don't think a writer should be thinking in those terms of I've got too many. You use as many as you need to tell your story, to take the conflict, to its central conflict, to its resolution.
Something has to be happening emotionally. It can't just be, it's like The Fugitive. Right. It moved it along because you're being revealed and you're seeing Dr. Richard Kimball. His life is in shambles, yeah. and things are falling apart. But each scene, or Tommy Lee Jones and his agenda, each scene is revealing different parts.
It's a beautifully written screenplay. I used to use it to teach from sometimes. I felt the 3rd act fell apart a bit, but the first 2 acts are as good as anything you could ever see, and it was almost impossible to screw it up. It was so well written. And it's a perfect example of every single scene moving the story forward. One of the things that happens in limited series now, there are so many of them, that take, again, 6, 8, 10 hours to tell a story that probably doesn't need that much time, is that you find yourself with repetitive scenes that are making the same point over and over and over and over again. My wife and I were trying to watch a limited series that seemed like it might be interesting just recently, and after 4 episodes, we said, I cannot sit this. I'm seeing the same beats over and over because they clearly don't have enough story. So that those repetitive beats are agony for the audience. Again, it violates the what happens next. I didn't care anymore.
How will a writer know whether a scene belongs in their script or not?
If it advances the central conflict. And the second it doesn't, I mean, every writer has written scenes that they absolutely love and then been painfully forced to cut them out because it just isn't necessary. I used to use the put your hand over it rule, especially in an outline. You could literally put your hand over that scene, and if it tracks without it, it's gone. You can cut it now, or you can cut it later, is usually the motto. Why not cut it now before you've wasted time and money shooting it, especially if you're shooting your own feature. Directors have had the same experience, many. I can't tell you how many directors I've worked with. Oh, I love that scene. When I wrote it, when I shot it, it was great. And then when I look at the assembled footage and the rough cut, it's like, I don't need any of that. I don't need any of that. I can do that. The actor did that with one look. I don't need those 3 scenes that I spent so much time on and maybe even loved them. But if they don't advance that story, get rid of them. The audience is way ahead of you most of the time, and your job is to stay ahead of them. They don't want to be ahead of you. They're trying. I think it's going to go here. You better, if you've got a scene that does not move the story, get rid of it. Might as well do it now. Somebody's going to cut it sooner or later.
So then if you take that beat sheet and you cover one of the scenes and then things don't make sense, then you know it's a keeper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then yeah, I need it. Usually it's by this point in my career, it's certainly kind of instinctive, but there are still times when it's like, wait a minute, I thought I needed that, now I realize I don't. It's a good rule of thumb. And you can do that in the script as well. I mean, man, it'll do it with your hand, but if you just say, wait a minute, if I go from here to here, what am I missing? Is the audience going to have any trouble knowing where everybody is and emotionally and otherwise? No, they're not. Get rid of it. Again, that's one of those things you're going to get a lot of notes. How's the audience going to know they got from here to there? You know, they'll figure it out. That's what cuts are for. You know, the famous cut in Lawrence of Arabia where he's holding up a match and he's in Cairo and he's just been given an assignment. He holds up a match and he lets it burn down to his fingertips. Then he goes and blows it out just before it touches his fingertips, and lean hard cut to the desert in morning as the sun rises over the horizon. And then we see Lawrence on a camel. Well, nobody asked how he got to Arabia. He's in Arabia. It's a movie. You know, was he on a boat? I don't know. A train? How'd he get there? Who cares? He's there. It's surprising how little of that connective tissue that people will often try to force into a script actually needs to be there. If the only information in a scene is non-emotional, that is to say, if it's just data, it's that the scene is there only to explain where this guy went to school. It's only there to explain that he that he used to be a spy. That's just data. You can weave that in somewhere else. That's backstory. If there is no emotional reason for the scene, get rid of it.
Sure, I'm thinking of the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of, her job is sort of this, investigator, sort of online, but there's a lot of data that's she presents to this magazine editor.
Right.
And that is her job to monitor different people.
Right. A lot of the times it's what you're being asked to put in is information about a character. Actors will do that a lot, of course. Just you get a star and you need the star to get your movie made, and the star wants more information about the character. What the fun part of it is to try and find subtle, clever, visual, cinematic ways to reveal what needs to be revealed, but not do an entire scene explaining where they come from. Sometimes there's no choice, but even then you want to cover your tracks and try to make it feel as much as possible as if the story is moving forward as we're learning that information. That's exposition, that's not a scene. when you're just learning information about someone as opposed to emotional information.